Hello everyone, this is Remlays from 40k Theories, and welcome to the September 2018 edition of the Patreon Q&A sessions. As always, if you want your questions answered, then click the link in the video description below and help support the channel by becoming a patron. Now, let's jump into these questions. Mark Heafield asks, how much Mjod do you think a Primarch could drink before getting drunk? A lot. Mjod was created purely to get Space Marines drunk by overriding their immune system, so considering a Primarch's own physiology is even greater than that of a Space Marine, it would need to be a lot. Voice of the Emperor asks, could you open a warp rift in the middle of a Tyranid high fleet, opened via a regular cruiser to be able to slowly stem the tide of limitless nids, and possibly give Chaos a fright? By that I mean, could you open up a warp rift in front of a high fleet to stop an invasion, but instead of using an Emperor-class battleship, use a cruiser? You can open a warp rift with any warp-capable craft, it's just that an Emperor-class battleship has bigger warp engines, which in turn means a bigger warp rift is created. One of the Blood Angel's successor chapters attempts this in Devastation of Baal. Not the Angels Excelsis, it's a different one. I can't remember their name off the top of my head, but they do the same thing. They get one of their ships, they evacuate it, they leave a literal skeleton crew there and set the warp drives to overload and open up, and yeah, it's a warp bomb essentially. Ulbrick asks, I have a few questions, so please bear with me. Firstly, do you know that Dark Heresy established precedent for a Mechanicus Inquisitor in the form of Cyric Scale? Funnily enough, he was a character I only came across relatively recently, so I didn't know up until then, no. Has there ever been an instance of a tech priest worshipping the Emperor as the God Emperor instead of the Omnissiah? Not from what I've encountered, though I will admit I haven't read all the Mechanicus-themed novels like the Priests of Mars series, for example, so I can't confirm or really deny this, but from my experience I haven't seen any instances of it. How do you feel about the theory that the Tyranids are fleeing from something worse than them? That's been completely debunked by the end of Pharos. The epilogue to Pharos literally shows the reason why they came to the galaxy, and it was due to the Pharos beacon being overloaded, which attracted them. Lastly, is it known whether the bio-augmentation technology of the Drukhari was developed during the height of the Eldari Empire? As far as I'm aware, yes. The Eldari Empire at its peak had things like flesh crafters and shapers, who were pretty much just mad artists and scientists, so I'm pretty sure it was back then it was developed. Brandon A asks, has the Imperium considered using xenos animals in their fight for survival? And by animals, I mean the more dangerous ones, such as dropping fire scorpions into an orc camp. Well, the Imperium does use things such as hunting lizards for mounts for the regiments of Rough Riders, but as for weaponized animals, you do have the bomb rats of Necromunda, and you also have Thirstwater. In Devastation of Baal, the Blood Angels make a moat and fill it with Thirstwater, which is debatable whether it's an animal or not, but it's a creature that looks like water, but if you drink it, it basically turns you to dust as it absorbs all traces of moisture from your body. It's terrifying. But they filled a moat with Thirstwater and it completely wrecked the Tyranids. Austin Horner asks, with Magnus' soul being broken up like the Emperor's, is it possible that more beings similar to Janus have been created without Magnus' knowledge? I'm not entirely sure about the shards of Magnus. I still need to read through Crimson King to get a definitive answer, but I'm going to assume no. Heather Gochioso asks, if you lived on a planet being brought into compliance during the Great Crusade, who would you prefer to bring you into compliance and who would you not want to? Bringing me into compliance, I'll go for Ultramarines. Not wanting to bring me into compliance, it'll be a toss-up between the Night Lords, World Eaters, and, funnily enough, the Blood Angels. while the Blood Angels are very nice boys, there's always the risk of someone getting a little thirsty. Do you think the Emperor is either an avatar of Malice or Malice himself? No. What do you think the Dark Angels would do if they succeeded in capturing all the Fallen? They would probably wipe their foreheads and go, "Oh thank fuck, we got away with it." Who do you think the better God Emperor is? The Emperor or Leto Artades II? I'm assuming the latter is from Dune, which I haven't actually read, so I can't really comment. Eliphaz asks, are there any noteworthy tech marines and what were their greatest achievements? Not to my knowledge, no. All the legendary Space Marine characters either tend to be captains, or librarians, or even chaplains. You also very rarely get an apothecary like Corbulo, but as far as tech marines go, they've generally gotten the short end of the stick in this regard. I've not encountered any noteworthy tech marines, though if there were any, they'd probably be Iron Hands, let's be honest. Luke Welsh asks, how much of the Horus Heresy is known to the general populace of the Imperium? This is very inconsistent. Some places don't even know about it at all. Some places know the bare minimum that, Horus turned against the Emperor and sought to control the Imperium for himself. Some places know that the traitors cavorted with demons, and some don't. It's very inconsistent. It depends on the world/author, let's be honest. But generally not much is known by the general populace, only the absolute bare minimum, at best. Wolf of England asks, any chance of having Arch Warhammer appear on Adeptus Podcastus? So when we first started the podcast a few years ago and started having guests, to my knowledge an invitation was extended to Arch to join us, but he chose to decline, so probably not. Zero Hits asks, if Lucius the Eternal was slain by a psychic blank, would this be enough to permanently kill him? If the blank took no satisfaction in the kill, then yes. Kanji Gold asks, with Iniad, the god of the Talvar, and possibly the Emperor turning into a pantheon of warp gods of order to rival the Chaos gods, do you think there will be a fourth god to appear, and if so, what or who could it be? I don't think they're turning into a pantheon of order gods, though if they are, a fourth god would be symbolically appropriate considering there's 4 major Chaos gods. As for a potential candidate, I would assume maybe Isha, if she ever ends up escaping Nurgle's garden. Either that or Sigma! Sorry. Graham Disley asks, is there any documented evidence from the loyalists of Erebus being the main cause of the Horus Heresy? Again, not that I've encountered, though I haven't managed to read every single Horus Heresy story because there's so damn many of them, so one of them may say, but from what I've experienced, no. Tyder Rossett asks, could an Eldari Wraith construct such as a Wraith Lord or Wraith Knight become an avatar of Cain? From my understanding, no, and the reason for that is because the avatar needs a blood sacrifice. The blood of the young king is put into the cup of Creel, which the young king takes with him with the Wailing Doom as he enters the avatar's chamber. The avatar then emerges from the chamber, wielding the Wailing Doom, and his hand is dripping with blood, which is assumed to be that of the young king. So I'm gonna go on a limb and say no. Darks asks, if you could choose any 9 Primarchs to be on your side during the Heresy, who would you choose? Okay, so I'm going to assume this also includes their legions, so I would pick the Blood Angels and Sanguinius, because Sanguinius was, the best of everyone, let's be honest. One of the few warriors that Leman Russ said he could not beat in a fight. I'd pick Horus because Horus was a military genius. Dawn and Perturabo for their siege building and siege breaking abilities. Magnus for sheer psychic power. Kurz because Kurz was also one of the few Primarchs that Leman Russ admitted he could not beat in a fight. How many's left? 4. 3. 3. Vulcan, because a Perpetual is always bloody useful. Gilliman, for contingency plans, he's good at those. and Alfaris because espionage is always useful. If you think you can beat that team, leave a comment below, I'd like to see your reasons. Opsic Stabber asks, if the Tau Empire was lucky and found a long-lost Night World before the Imperium, what would happen? Would the Tau be excited to integrate them, or would the Knights simply resist regardless? In this instance, it depends on the individual Night World. Some could be extremely xenophobic, some would be more willing to talk. The Tau would do what they normally do. They would send in the water cars to try, establish diplomatic relations, trade, that kind of thing, and go, hey, we got this, empire thing, do you want to join? You could be really useful to, make a lot of friends, So that's what would happen. Has it ever crossed your mind that an easily built frigate/destroyer in 40k is the size of an Imperial-class Star Destroyer from Star Wars? What's the most interesting idea implication that comes to you from this comparison between one of the larger ships in Star Wars and one of the smaller ones in 40k? Basically, the Galactic Empire is fucked if it ever had to fight the Imperium. Can the movie Event Horizon be considered to be a prequel to 40k? In your own headcanon, sure, why not? In terms of it being an actual prequel, no, it's not endorsed by Games Workshop in any way, so absolutely not. Is it inspired by 40k? Most likely, but as a true prequel, no. Let's be honest, Chainsaw Warrior and Dark Future have better claims to being prequels, and that's only because they were developed by Games Workshop. Thomas Miller asks, is there any lore which points towards sea-based naval combat? Yes there is, it's in Tyrant of the Hollow Worlds. The Red Corsairs and one of the Hollow Worlds PDF have a big naval battle on one of the oceans. I also want to point out at this time that the Red Corsairs used giant pirate ships with tank treads, which is bloody awesome. There's also in Trial of Blood where the Orcs use submarines, but they just used it to try and attack a Titan that was walking through the boiling sea. And finally, Brent Feast asks, how much do we know about the Rangdan? We know they were technologically advanced, they were extremely aggressive, extremely dangerous, caused immense casualties to the Imperium, potentially wiped out one or both of the Lost Legions, nearly crippled the Dark Angels, and they were possibly in service to or enslaved by the Sloth. Aside from that, not much. And that concludes this edition of the Patreon Q&A sessions. As always, if you want your questions answered, click the link in the video description below, and support our channel by becoming a patron. Until next time, this has been Remlays from 40k Theories, and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye.